Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And welcome to the PAC Disruptors Summit 2021. We have an absolutely wonderful program for you today, June the 2nd, and in a week's time on Wednesday, June the 9th. And as you can see, we'll be kicking off with the plant-based revolution, sustainable paper-based coffee packaging. Now, while I continue talking and introducing myself, we're going to have a few poll questions for you. So we're going to post those poll questions while I'm speaking, and we'd welcome a yes or no answer. So let's introduce myself. My name's Alan Blake, and I am your moderator today. And I am the PAC Next US Director, and I am based in a very warm Las Vegas. Now, we want you to be part of the conversation, the discussions today. So we're going to ask you to post your questions in the Q&A box, and you can find that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. I know that despite all of this, many of you will also find the chat box. So if you post questions there on comments there, that's fine. But if you can, please post them in the Q&A box, because it makes it much easier for me when I'm asking the questions at the end. But your participation is so important to us, so please engage and take advantage of the chat box and the Q&A box. With that, what I'd like to do is to start getting things going. So I'm going to introduce our speakers. And first we have Claudio Giametti. He's the Chief Innovation Officer at Club Coffee. And Claudio has led Club Coffee's disruptive approach to innovation in the coffee world since 2013, with a focus on sustainable packaging solution. Club's first major breakthrough under his leadership was the world's first compostable single-serve coffee pod. And of course, Claudio's latest project arrives on store shelves later this year when Club Coffee and its brand partners introduce Baudio, a revolutionary high-barrier paper-based recyclable packaging format for coffee. Now, before joining Club Coffee, Claudio earned a strong reputation as a strategic thinker with deep CPG R&D acumen in building a record of success with iconic brands at Loblaw Companies Limited and Procter & Gamble. So I know you'll be delighted to welcome Claudio. Our second speaker is Johan Verm, and he is System Sales Director at AR Packaging. And Johan has played a major role in developing the revolutionary packaging systems Bordeaux and Celio, which meet today's and tomorrow's ever-increasing needs for sustainable packaging without compromising product safety, consumer convenience, and branding possibilities. The market introduction of the fiber-based Baudio, certified for recycling, is driven by Johan and his cross-functional team, worldwide, with a number of key players having products packed in Bordeaux in stores later this year. With more than 20 years in packaging and a strong belief in true partnership, Johan has led many successful business introductions where new innovations were launched in strategic cooperation with multinational customers and brand owners. There we go. Two great speakers. I'm now going to hand over to Claudio and Johan to take you through their presentation. And again, please feel free to add comments in the chat or questions in the QA throughout the presentation. Over to you, Claudio and Johan.
Thank you for the introduction, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
It's great to see you. It's great to see you again. Good morning, Johan, or good afternoon, Johan.
Good morning, Claudio.
I'd also like to thank Jim and PAC for providing this opportunity to share our story with you today. Just a quick note, we wanted to take you through a quick overview of who we are as companies. So I just want to take you through who Club Coffee is. Club's got a 100-year+ legacy in creating coffee solutions. We're one of the largest coffee roasters in North America, and I like to say we're the little guys behind the big guys. We are a co-manufacturer. We produce coffee and package coffee for a lot of the very large brand names and retailers in North America. We're a strategic coffee partner for many of these brands and retailers. We like to think that we are a sustainable innovator We have differentiated ourselves through the years by taking on the tough sustainability challenges in coffee and packaging. And we have 2 state-of-the-art production facilities in Toronto that are BRC certified and GFSI certified. That's us. Johan Verm, why don't you tell us a little bit about AR packaging, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Claudio. Thank you, Alan, for the nice introduction. So yes, I am from AR Packaging, and AR Packaging is one of the larger leader European global companies when it comes to national brands. We have around 30 plants in 13 different countries, where we have a clear focus on innovating sustainable carton and flexible solution that can meet any of different kind of products on the marketplace. And where I'm coming from as on my daily work in the system, we also having 3 different system that they can meet many products on the marketplace, where we are then providing both machinery and materials. So Claudio, let me then share the screen.
Yeah. When we put up the objective slide, what do you think we should talk about today, Johan?
Well, I mean, why? I don't know what you have in mind, but perhaps we should talk a little bit around coffee and packaging, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So we'll go through a bit of an introduction, which we're pretty much through at this point, just give you a bit of context. We'll talk about some coffee packaging trends, because I think that's important to kind of setting the stage for where Bordeaux comes in, and then we'll take you through Bordeaux and its application in coffee. Most importantly, I mean,
I think, Claudio, I have some technical issues here to share my screen, Lindsay, because I cannot get it up through Zoom here. Let me see now. Now I know how to do it.
Okay. Sorry, folks, just give us a second.
Sorry.
Okay. So as I was saying, we will we'll start with some coffee packaging trends, go through Bordeaux and its application to coffee. Importantly, take you through the consumer acceptance of Bordeaux, which I think is a fantastic story. And then we've got a little surprise at the end to talk about a market launch later this year.
Okay.
Can we go to the next slide, please? So here's another skill testing question. What do Sweden and Canada have in common? I would say maybe lots of trees and forests, which is a good thing for Bordeaux since it's paper-based. Our love for sports played on ice, namely hockey and curling. Both seem to be global leaders in these 2 sports. And their addiction to coffee, where we rank 3rd and Sweden ranks 5th in the world on per capita consumption of coffee. So these 2 little cold countries that love ice and hockey and curling also love to drink coffee. And to me, that seems like the perfect recipe, Johan, for two companies and 2 countries that are suited to disrupt the coffee category in North America, wouldn't you say?
I couldn't agree more, Claudio. You're absolutely correct.
Okay, next slide, please. So coffee is everywhere. I mean, this image probably reminds us of pre-pandemic world where coffee was available just about anywhere you went in the world. I think the pandemic changed some of that, but it still is one of the most highly consumed beverages in the world. And it is a beverage that consumers definitely love to consume. It's estimated that globally we drink about 2.25 billion cups of coffee every day, every single day. That's about 1.5 times the amount of water that pours over Niagara Falls every day. It's a tremendous amount of coffee. And with that comes a tremendous amount of packaging, obviously, and our responsibility for that packaging. To take it a little closer to home, Canadians consume more than 15 pounds of coffee each per year. It's a lot of coffee, which adds up to about almost 500 million pounds of coffee. How have consumption patterns changed with the pandemic? they've changed pretty significantly, especially in terms of our out-of-home consumption. A lot of that out-of-home consumption shifted to in-home consumption as people were forced to stay home and our commuting significantly reduced. What did this mean to the industry? Well, for the food service coffee business, which is a huge part of the coffee business, it declined by over 50% in many countries, while retail coffee sales have been on fire because people are still drinking just as much coffee, they're just buying it and bringing it home. So the retail sector has actually been growing significantly. Most of you sitting here this morning with us are likely in front of a computer at home right now. And if you had a cup of coffee this morning, you most likely brewed it at home. So it's pretty obvious that, coffee is still an important part of what we do and or what we enjoy every day. And although where we enjoy it has changed, we're still drinking a lot of it. But again, that sets the stage for packaging opportunities. Next slide, please, Johan. So we have at Club Coffee always looked at key macro trends and then trends that impact our industry, namely beverage trends and coffee trends. The trends that you see on this slide, convenience, omni-channel, sustainability, et cetera, have always been macro trends that we've kept a strong eye on because these have been drivers of the industry in general. The pandemic changed a lot of things and accelerated change in many of the macro trends that we've been tracking. Consumer behavior changed significantly, especially with respect to their purchase habits. Although in-restaurant eating was decimated over the last year and a half, takeout and food delivery became the new norm. So convenience really, in terms of in-home delivery, was something that we learned, a new behavior that we learned in terms of how we got certain products to our homes. E-commerce shopping grew from single digits pre-pandemic to over 40% of purchases overnight. We started to notice the impacts of human activity on the planet. Air quality improved, carbon emissions went down. We saw a return of wildlife in certain areas, and as an unexpected outcome of people just slowing down and staying at home. In many cases, these changes brought with them changes in packaging and packaging requirements. How many of you have noticed the number of vehicles that drive up and down your street every day with delivering packages and dropping off food and goods from all over the world to you and your neighbors? Again, an obvious change in the way we consume, the way things get delivered, and the packaging requirements for those things. Next slide, please, Johan. So I wanted to take a second just to explain how we look at innovation at Club Coffee and how we approach where we invest our resources. A bunch of the changes we just talked about in terms of the pandemic pre and post have brought about with them new opportunities. What we like to do is track the macro trends and map those across what's going on in coffee and what's going on in the beverage category in general. When we look at these things, we look for unmet consumer needs. So Alan, as you would know as an ex-Proctorite, that's one of the things we all learned is identifying the unmet consumer need and honing in on it to figure out whether or not there is a way that we can take that opportunity and translate it into a product or some gap filler that addresses that need. And as we find these unmet consumer needs, we identify opportunities and we take those on and look at them from the perspective of, is there either an application or intellectual property that we can leverage? Is there a partnership that we can create? Is there something in technology that we can bring to the marketplace that will address that gap and ultimately give us an opportunity to develop a differentiated product for consumers and customers alike? Next slide, please, Johan. I also wanted to take a minute just to talk about coffee packaging and the evolution of coffee. Coffee has taken a very interesting journey over the last couple of 100 years, starting as predominantly Robusta beans, for those of you who understand the difference between Robusta and Arabica. And those beans have evolved to the higher quality, more universal Arabica bean that's used predominantly throughout the world for most coffees, although there's still a lot of Robusta used. And what we've seen in recent years is a trend towards sourcing sustainably, so that coffee, to the extent that it can be, is more often today sustainably sourced than it would have been in previous years. On the flip side of that, there's the packaging journey for coffee. In the last couple of 100 years, coffee packaging hasn't changed significantly, let's say. Let's say at least in the last 100+ years, the focus is, if we look back at early days, the tins were used as early as the 1800s. So a couple of 100 years ago, tins were already being used for coffee. In the mid 1800s, plastic became a material that became available, but we really didn't start using that until later into the 1900s. In the last 10 years, the focus has really turned, just one second, I'm also having some technical difficulties here. So let me go back for a second. Coffee tins were first used to package coffee over 200 years ago and then converted to steel about 60 years ago. And really, they haven't changed much since then. Multi-layer plastic bags, what we call in the coffee business quad seal bags, have been around for about 50 years. And then more rigid plastic containers came into existence in the last 20 years or so. It's amazing to think that plastic food packaging has been around for only about 80 years. And oh, what a challenge it's created in that time. The point of all this is although coffee itself has moved towards sustainable sourcing in the last 100 years, coffee packaging really hasn't changed much. And this has created an opportunity to move towards sustainable packaging for coffee. Next slide, please, Johan. So it's no news to anyone that plastic packaging waste has come under a tremendous amount of scrutiny over the last few years as it continues to build up in the environment. As we saw years ago with single-serve coffee pods, consumers loved the convenience, but they didn't feel great about the plastic waste. Consumers also are increasingly more concerned about microplastics and the overall impact of plastics on their health. So we went looking for a way to package coffee more sustainably in a way that protected coffee's delicate flavor and aroma while reducing plastic and improving the overall impact of the coffee package. Next slide, please. And we found Bordeaux, an innovative paperboard packaging system that significantly reduces plastic. It's recyclable, it provides the needed barrier and shelf life that are critical to coffee success. We've combined Club Coffee's 100+ years of coffee processing and packaging expertise with AR Packaging's 100+ years of packaging expertise to provide a breakthrough system that will deliver the freshest, best tasting, and most sustainable cup of coffee on the planet. So with that, my patient colleague, Johan, will walk you through some of the magical properties of Bordeaux now.
Thank you, Claudio. Thank you, Claudio, for explaining Cloud's reasoning into why you decided to continue a great coffee journey with Bordeaux. So let me then present a little bit what Bordeaux stands for. So when we developed the Bordeaux system, we had some key attributes on top of mind that we believed would be essential for the future. We should maximize the use of renewable material without reducing shelf life or food safety. We should minimize the amount of unnecessary plastic without reducing shelf life or food safety. Bordeaux, together with its sisters and brothers, Sicacan and Celio, are will continue to be delivered flat and not pre-made to ensure that we minimize the CO2 impact as much as possible. And Bordeaux also needed to be recyclable in an easy, accessible, and proven recycling stream. This was the key attributes that we thought about when developing the system as such. So then if we go to renewable material, I mean, the main part of Bordeaux is coming from renewable material, which is coming from forests that is sustainably managed using the PFSC or FSC certifications. We are also making sure that there is no deforestation in the areas where we are utilizing the board by always plant more trees than we take out and harvest. Material is also optimized to ensure the minimum use while still, as I said before, maintaining the shelf life and food safety, and also having recyclability on top of mind. And when it comes to the Bordeaux system, it's not only a solution that is tailored for high barrier products such as coffee or infant formula, but the pack itself can be tailor-made for barrier appropriate for the specific product that you as a customer would like to pack in this system. And if we look as a comparison to a tin can, we are reducing the weight with 60%. To take out all unnecessary plastic is something that is really, really important for the future. So when we looked at this, we maximize the amount of fiber and looking how much plastic we really need to ensure the quality in a clear comparison between Bordeaux and a quad seal bag that Claudio was speaking about before, we see a plastic reduction of 48%. While if we look at the plastic tub, we see a dramatic change with 80% reduced of unnecessary plastic. As I said in the beginning, our systems are delivered flat and are not pre-made. This will impact the inbound logistic dramatically, and it's a clear benefit versus metal, plastic, glass, or composite cans, which are all pre-formed solution. So if you look in a like-for-like size of a can of 1.9 liter, you can see that we only need 3 trucks for our components delivered into the point of filling, while a preformed can need 56 trucks to meet the same amount of material. This is a significant change, a very big difference. And to ensure what I've said here, we have made a life cycle analysis that has been confirmed by a third party, where we then see at how much lower CO2 does a Bordeaux solution generate in comparison to a blow mold or a tin can. And you can see here, there is an 86% reduction of CO2 between a tin can and a Bordeaux, and 78% in difference between a blow molded and a Bordeaux. And on top of that, Bordeaux is also then designed for being recyclable. And the most by far widely and accessible recycling stream in North America is the paper recycling stream. And therefore we designed Bordeaux to be recycled as paper. And to make sure to strengthen that message, we also have let Western Michigan University verify this and also added a label from how to recycle, where we then got widely recyclable as the label to put on our solution, which has been extremely important for launching this product to the North American marketplace. Our focus has not been to ensure that this is widely recyclable in North America. Since we are having a global approach, we are also looking into this in other parts of geographic in the world, looking for right kind of labeling, working with national environmental organization to ensure the right message and the right stream to be recycled in. So if we look a little bit into our history, Baudio is our latest development based on extensive experience of demanding food packaging solution for many, many years. And it all started 1929 when Mr. Rausing came to Sweden, come back to Sweden after his studies in the US at Columbia University. He then founded Åkerlund and Rausing and established the first industrial consumer packaging company in Europe. In the mid-1960s, Mr. Rausing decided to pursue his idea of developing a fiber-based solution for liquid products, creating the Tetra Pak company, while we at A&R continue our journey of focusing on dry products. And you can see in our development with Sikacan in the mid-1980s, with Bordeaux, it is very flexible when it comes to its shape. It doesn't need to be square. It can also be triangular, round, or oval if needed. Our first gas-tight solution was launched 1986, and it's quite funny, that was made out for the coffee product. So we are now back in 2021 launching the Baudio system. As I said from the beginning, we are not a pre-made solution. All the 5 components are delivered flat into the point of filling, like for example, Toronto, where it's then shaped to the defined shape that the customer Club Coffee has decided to be. And it's all sealed together without glue to ensure a food safety by utilizing pressure and heat. And here you can then see how the pack will look like when it's filled, coming out from our system, from our machines. There has been lots of talk about coffee, but we are not only focusing on coffee for our product. We are quite wide in our offering, looking at snacks, confectionery, food powder, also looking into nutrition, pharma, and beauty. So the opportunity with the system as such is very wide. And as I said before, we are flexible in tailor-made specifications according to your product. So it can be everything from a low barrier to a high barrier demand. So what if, just to put it in perspective, if we are looking at the plastic tub, and all plastic tub in North America that can reasonably be replaced by Bordeaux actually were replaced, we would get rid of plastic packages that would otherwise mostly end up in landfill, equivalent to 600 filled Olympic-size swimming pools. And if we do the same exercise for plastic pouches in North America that can reasonably be replaced, and they were replaced, that normally then are going to landfill, we will then fill up 200 hockey rinks up to 1 meter on a year base. On a year base. Claudio, what do you say about that?
Just to make sure everybody got that, this is 600 swimming pools worth of plastic packaging that will be diverted by converting those plastic tubs to Bordeaux, and the same with the plastic pouches, 200 ice rinks full of packaging that will be diverted from landfill by introducing Bordeaux. Is that right?
Correct. Per year.
Per year.
Per year.
That's big.
And then on top of that, we have also then a significant change or reduction of CO2. So the discussions we have had, Claudio, during this presentation so far to reduce unnecessary plastic is something we really are working with and having on top of mind, right?
Absolutely. And the consumer expects us to be there.
Correct. So then, I mean, consumer have sustainability and recyclability in mind. And Claudio, you need to read for me what is standing in the green square to the right, because I have your face in front of all this, so I can unfortunately not read it from the screen. I'm so sorry for that.
Well, you got the better of the two. I'll read it for you.
Thank you very much. Pure and real cooperation.
Yes, this is real collaboration. 66% of US consumers prefer paper and cardboard packaging for being better for the environment. So that's the first point. So consumers prefer paperboard. 57% of consumers are actively taking steps to reduce their use of plastic packaging, and 36% of consumers would avoid retailers that are not actively trying to reduce their use of non-recyclable materials. I think it says it's cut off at the bottom. Anyway, as I said a minute ago, the consumer's out ahead of us here. The consumer already is looking for solutions that are not plastic, that are something that they recognize, and putting paperboard and paperboard solutions in front of them is something they intuitively associate with an inherently more environmentally friendly or responsible package. So Bordeaux is right in the crosshairs of where consumers expect us to be. And rather than us having our own opinions about that, what Johan has just put up is a slide that talks about the consumer research we've been doing. And we started way back over a year and a half ago with qualitative research to get to the point of understanding whether consumers preferred bags or rigid containers, plastic or paper, etc. So we did some qualitative, then we supported that with a large in-home use test with Bordeaux, and ultimately did some more shelf testing and qualitative testing recently. And again, rather than relying on my opinion, we asked 600 consumers what they thought of Bordeaux, 300 in Canada and 300 in the US. And the slide says it all. They absolutely love Bordeaux. Overall, Bordeaux improved the consumer coffee experience and enhanced quality perception of the coffee. So just making it easier to make a cup of coffee that made them appreciate the coffee in the container more. Consumers found it convenient, easy to handle, easy to scoop and store. They found it a modern and relevant and environmentally friendly solution. Bordeaux was preferred 70-30 versus conventional coffee bags. In my experience in consumer testing, a 70-30 win is no contest. Basically saying, this is it. This is the package I want. And 86% of panelists, so almost everybody, said they were willing to switch to Bordeaux. Amongst the bag users, we identified another unmet consumer need. So I talked earlier about the way we look at opportunities and unmet consumer needs, and we identified as moving consumers into sustainable packaging and away from plastic as the driver for Bordeaux. What we found through our consumer testing is that Bordeaux addressed another unmet need, especially for bag users. Although we were a little bit concerned about this 20+ year habit of consumers using bags for their coffee, and we thought that they just liked that, preferred that, because that was the way things were done. What we identified was that that particular behavior and package is really inconvenient, and they really don't like it. It's just that they don't have anything better to use. So through the research, we found out that if you give a consumer Bordeaux, which has all of the attributes that Johan and I have talked about through the presentation, they love it because it addresses a bunch of the needs that bags currently do not address. Bags are inconvenient. They're tight, they're narrow, they're hard to get your hand into, they're hard to scoop out of. You have to open and close them with these reclosable tin ties. There's just a lot of work involved. And the minute you give them something as convenient and easy to understand and use as Bordeaux, they absolutely love it. The other thing that we learned through the research is that we've been asked, what about how difficult or easy it's going to be for consumers to find Bordeaux on the shelf when you convert bags or cans to the shelf? And again, early results suggest that Bordeaux is actually in consumers' minds. This was actual testing we did in a store setting in a lab, that it's faster to find and easier to find. Again, reinforcing the superiority of this packaging solution versus conventional solutions in the trade today. Next slide, please. And so off we go. It's time to get Bordeaux on the shelf and into consumers' hands and into stores. Our lines are installed and we're ramping up as we speak. We have one line dedicated to a smaller bag size pack and another line dedicated to the larger can and tub size pack. The craft roaster package that you see in this image is a representation of the overall look of the large container shape and height, although we can vary the height as needed. So this is the general look of the package for what would replace a can. And then we have varying heights that we can customize this to, as Johan talked about earlier. It's very customizable. The entire filling and sealing operation are conducted under modified atmosphere, so everything is packed under nitrogen. And at time of packing, it looks like our oxygen levels are going to be less than 1%, which is really good. The other thing you'll notice from the image here is that there's a real efficiency with Bordeaux, and we've chosen a shape that is specifically efficient in terms of pallet fit and supply chain efficiency. And it really ends up being a densification, both in terms of pallet, but you can imagine this densification as you take it to the shelf, how much more you'll be able to squeeze on the shelf because of the way we've optimized the height and the dimensions of Bordeaux. We have just this week started making full packs on our line, and in the next week or two, we'll be integrating the filling and end of line packaging of the Bordeaux system. So this is very exciting times at Club Coffee, and we can't wait to get going. Next slide,
So
please.
shouldn't we then perhaps see something what is happening up in Toronto in live?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to show you a little clip of what the front end of the line looks like. So Johan walked you through the various steps in forming the package. We'll take you through the front end of the line that actually forms the Bordeaux package. And as I said, we're just getting that filling line sorted as we speak, and we'll be able to show you that at some future date.
I mean, this is the way how it's formed and how it's pushed forward and into the can maker, as we call it, then passing through the filling equipment that Claudio was talking about, and then there is a second machine that will then seal the product in gas tight atmosphere. So that is what is going on with two lines in Toronto. And it's amazing to see it.
Yeah, we made the video particularly slow so that the viewer could see what was going on. But when we run this at full speed, it's a little bit scary to see how many containers are coming off the line. And clearly, at Club, we've got the roasting and grinding and filling capacity to meet the capacity of the lines that we've installed. So there you go. Very slick engineering, and we're really excited.
So
next slide, please. And so we have a big announcement to make today here for the PAC community. And that is that we're very proud to be able to announce that Loblaw, Canada's largest retailer and owner of the top brands in the country, will be launching their entire coffee program in Bordeaux starting later this year. They will be the first to market in Canada and will show the power that this disruptive technology has in amplifying their success in the coffee category. And I just want to underscore one point that I made earlier, just so we understand that Bordeaux is a packaging solution and a packaging system, yes, for sure. But as I said earlier, our expertise as a coffee roaster and processor and ARP's packaging expertise will deliver the freshest, best tasting, and most sustainable cup of coffee on the planet. And it's going to be coming to you first and soon in President's Choice and No Name coffees. So get ready to go buy some. With that, Johan, you want to take them through our fun little loop?
Yeah, I mean, let's end this great opportunity to present what we have ongoing and soon to be seen in the market, and just a fun little clip that we have made for another event that we thought would be fitting quite good into here. So enjoy the small little clip before we coming back to the last slides.
Triangle, rectangle, circle, and square. 4 new friends that'll get you there. Unique, green, and with print all around. Looks dandy, filled with candy. A wide opening to get your treat. The shapes just cannot be beat. Let's all board the brand new package train with Baudio, our fresh new package.
Very cute.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Alan, back to you.
Baudio and Johan, thank you so much. An outstanding presentation. And I'm pleased to tell you, we have tons of questions. And
excellent.
I know you're going to do your utmost to answer them because they're all great questions.
Didn't we agree that you should answer them?
Well, I'm not sure
no
I'll keep the attendees happy. But as you can imagine, a lot of questions. So let's get into this one. And there's some subsets of this first question. But essentially, the key high-level question is, what happens to the non-paper components of Bordeaux in the recycling process?
Johan, do you want me to take that, or do you?
You
want
can
to
take that one. Yeah, you can take it.
Okay, so I mean, we've done extensive work with the recycling stream to make sure that what we were putting into the marketplace was an actual, real, and verifiable solution. Starting with the testing that Johan spoke about earlier with Western Michigan University, what that test demonstrates is that the quantity of fiber and the quality of fiber are such that the recycling stream can use that fiber. So first of all, is the fiber separatable from the rest of the components? And then is the quality of fiber high enough in terms of glues or inks or other contaminants that it can actually be used by the downstream people who want to use that? So we passed that test on both accounts. The how to recycle people then, based on that result, tell you that, yes, this is widely recyclable and can be recycled effectively by most of the municipal programs in place using the processes that they already have in place. For example, Bordeaux will probably recycle very similar to a Tetra Pak, a juice container, a milk container, etc. So those rigid beverage containers that are already in the stream. We took it one step further and we shared Bordeaux with one of the largest paper recyclers in Canada. And they did some testing of their own. And what their results showed supported what we saw at Western Michigan, in that it's very easy to separate the high quality fiber from the foil and poly layers that are there to seal the container. And what they found is that once you separate those, the fiber is very available and the other materials can also be separated. Now, there are instances where that polyol, as it's called, or the combination of foil and polyethylene can be recycled. There are instances where it would be or could be, depending on what country you're in, incinerated. And there are instances when that will end up in landfill. So depending on the sophistication of the downstream recycler, those are the three scenarios. So again, could be recycled where facilities exist or where they have the technology to recycle it, could be incinerated, or could be going to landfill. I think what's important though, in the testing that we did with the downstream recycler, is they found the fiber to be of such a high quality that it would be upcycled and used to make the consumer packaged goods that they make, namely tissue paper, paper towels, bathroom tissue, etc. So it ended up, we closed the loop with Bordeaux in that the fiber is upcycled into more consumer packaged goods. I hope that answered the question.
Just as an add-on on that, I mean, we should also say that, Claudio, that there is lots of several ongoing projects to commercialize the recycling of polyol for the future. And I mean, we are part of in different kind of meetings and discussion about that. So that is something that is progressing and getting bigger and bigger, I would say as well. So that is something that will materialize in the future on a wider scale.
So is it fair to say that North American fiber mills see this as acceptable with cardboard or mixed fiber?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's both a demand for the high quality fiber that Bordeaux contains, and the ease of separation in the repulping process will make it a valuable commodity for them in terms of recapturing that fiber and reusing it in other products.
And then do you see, or have you looked at any maximum level of plastic and aluminium that can be tolerated before recycling isn't possible? Or it simply doesn't apply here to Bordeaux, you're fine?
I mean, we've tested Bordeaux in its North American configuration. We've developed Bordeaux, the particular material that we will be using at Club Coffee and likely will be used throughout other facilities as it gets expanded to other categories. That material is specifically tailored to the coffee need, first and foremost, and to North American recycling needs. So it's designed to meet those needs, and we've tested it through the North American, if you want to call it, verifiers that have suggested, not suggested, they have proven that it will work fine in the recycling streams already established in North America. So we haven't looked at increasing or decreasing. What we've talked about collaboratively between our two companies is at some point in the future, can those materials be substituted with something that you don't need to worry about recycling at all, because they would be part of the recycle stream in the paperboard, or could be another material that gets dissolved in the repulping process, or things of that nature. But that's future consideration. For the short term and the launch of Bordeaux, all the materials there are specifically designed to be suitable for recycling in North America and have been cleared to be so through the approved channels for recycling approval.
Right, great. Well, moving on, because there's also a lot of questions about how does Bordeaux compare to current packaging for maintaining shelf life and coffee freshness? And there's a lot of interest in barrier performance and a lot of interest, Johan, as well as an add-on to this for both of you in terms of cost comparisons and other potential applications outside of coffee.
So I'll take the barrier and shelf life one first, and then Johan, I'll kick it over to you for the cost discussion. So, I mean, Bordeaux, as Johan explained in the presentation, can be tailor-made to meet high, medium, low barrier demands. For coffee being one of the most demanding barrier products in the marketplace, obviously, we've designed it for the maximum barrier properties that can be achieved. And with that, we've done testing already, shelf life testing, both accelerated and ambient, that suggests that we're already at 1.5 years of shelf life and see absolutely no difference between classic packaging materials, so steel cans, laminated bags, etc., and Bordeaux. So Bordeaux is delivering at least as well as conventional packages that are currently in the marketplace for coffee. We believe it has some additional runway in terms of we'll get even more shelf life out of it. But ultimately, there comes a point where practical shelf life and actual shelf life really reach a limit where keeping coffee in packaging for 2 years, when you open it, the coffee's still 2 years old. It's not that it tastes the way it did at day 1 or day 2. So we'll get to the point where our customers and brand owners will say, yeah, I'm good with 1 year, I'm good with 1.5 years, whatever they choose to be the maximum for their brand. And Bordeaux will be easily able to deliver that on an ongoing basis. So far, so good. All the barrier property work is looking like Bordeaux is going to exceed our expectations of meeting at least this industry standard of 1 year of shelf life without any problem. Over to you, Johan.
If you be bored of producing coffee, Claudio, you can always start working for A&R as a salesman. Perfectly well answered that question. I mean, when it comes to the Bordeaux system, as I explained through the presentation, that we are flexible from size and also in the combination of the barrier required for the specific product, which then means that when we are in comparison with alternative packaging solution, we can of course tailor-made the quality of the board the barrier needed to ensure that we can be cost effective to a sense as well. And we need to remember that in our solution throughout the world, we have products such as standard normal flour that is packed into our system, like, for example, even high barrier product as infant formula. So we know quite well that we can position ourselves in good competition to what is possible on the marketplace.
Yeah, so Johan, go a little bit further here, because we've got some very specific areas. So I've been asked, can it be used for dairy products? Can it be used for frozen food? Can it be used for pharmaceutical products?
So answering that question, I would say yes to the dairy products. But I mean, as I said from the beginning, we made a clear route. We are there for dry type of products, not liquid products. So our focus is on the dry side. We can work with dairy products, I mean, formula based or in pills based, so to say. We cannot do a liquid product. Pharmaceutical, yes. We have been looking at making sure that our products and machines and materials are approved with certification that requires that in those kind of areas. But I think when it comes to pharmaceuticals, we need to be a little bit more specific on what kind of products we are talking about. But I mean, we are open to have those kind of discussions, of course.
Thank you. Now, there's another question, and it was bound to come as well, about life cycle analysis. And folks want to know how inclusive and exhaustive was the life cycle analysis that you did? Did it include coffee making? And then Claudio, this is something you'll be familiar with because of course you've got your compostable pods. Did you do a comparison of any different format? So for instance, did you do a comparison as well versus pods?
That was a long question, Alan. So shall we split them?
Yes, let's split them in two. Just give us the sense of the overall breadth of the life cycle analysis done for Baudio, and then were any other comparisons done versus other formats?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the life cycle analysis that was made for this was not containing the coffee production, right, Claudio? This was more focusing on the material and the production of the material used. And in this case, then a quad seal bag and a plastic tub, where we are taking from the cradle to the grave and take all the different assumptions into consideration when it comes to this. And we are of course utilizing a verified tool for this, where we populate all the information and get out the detailed analysis and result out of it. And Claudio, I think you can agree with me that there is an extensive kind of result and a summary based on what was done. But here again, we can set up specific meetings and have more detailed discussion on how this life cycle analysis will be done together with the right people from our side, with our sustainability director, etc. So, but we are always thinking from the beginning to the end. And in this case, we have only been looking at the packaging material and what's surrounding that.
Right, and I'll just add to that. We haven't generalized the results either. So we've got a variety of different customers in a variety of different formats. So when you talk about a plastic bag comparison or quad seal bag comparison versus Bordeaux, it has to be the right size and the right dimension to make the right comparison. Then when you look at a steel can, it's a very different scenario. When you look at a composite can, you need to take into account where the cans are coming from and who's making them and how far you're shipping them. So I think we've been relatively exhaustive, and we're not done yet. We still have some of those trials, some of those LCAs in progress, because we've been asked to look at all the packaging formats, and there are 4 key packaging formats in the marketplace. So we're looking at all of them. We're looking at them with the standard global software from a quantitative point of view, and then having them sometimes third-party verified by at least 1 or 2 different parties. So I think we've been very responsible and open in terms of our approach to LCAs, because we know that they will be scrutinized and criticized by many people. So that would be point 1. Absolutely. Point 2, in terms of, have we looked at it Bordeaux relative to single serve pods, for example. I'm sitting here wondering, what the comparison would be, because it wouldn't be a like for like comparison in that single serve pods on average are sold in 12, 24, 36, 50 count. The amount of coffee in that container and the amount of packaging in that container is, not sure that there's a direct comparison that you can do there. I mean, if we go way back to what we did when we launched compostable pods, we know that or just pods in general, we know that pods are a net food waste reducer. We know that about pods already, because there is a lot of coffee that, at least in the old office days, used to get thrown out. We used to say, coffee's best friend is the sink, because you make a pot of coffee and throw half of it down the sink. So that factor actually ended up with a lot of coffee being wasted in conventional R&G, roast and ground models versus single serve. So single serve has its benefits. I'm just not sure, Alan, how we go about comparing, single serve as a format versus R&G as a format versus Bordeaux. It's a bit complicated. Right. I need to give that some thought. But I think if we look at Bordeaux from the context of what it's meant to do, which is replace, plastic bags, plastic tubs, composite cans, steel cans, it's definitely an overall environmental winner and sustainability winner.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. All right, I've got some very quick fire yes or no questions, then we're done. Johan, does Baudio work in the frozen category? Yes or no?
I would say in this case, unfortunately, no.
Got it.
Can I add something really quickly, Alan? We actually put water into a Bordeaux container and left it for 3 days, and it did not lose a drop. So more to come there, but I think it would surprise us.
Can I then rephrase? We can have a look into it.
Good. Does the Bordeaux need a vent for off-gassing?
Yes.
For coffee, yes.
Yes, it has a one-way valve that we've optimized for coffee.
Is the fiber in Bordeaux bleached or brown?
In North America, it's bleached. Can be brown if any customer wants that, but in North America, to meet all the demands and requirements of recyclability, it's bleached.
Thank you. You have been brilliant. I would just, any final 1 or 2 sentences, final message to the attendees.
Really quick.
Claudio, you cannot be quick.
So let me be quick this time to say it's about time, and this is my war cry for the last year. It's about time sustainable packaging and sustainable coffee caught up with each other. Bordeaux will allow sustainable coffee to be packaged sustainably. So welcome to the new world of coffee packaging.
Thank you. Johan, 1 or 2 sentences.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, what Claudio was saying was exactly what we feel as well, and what we have been working with together with Club for the last almost 1.5 years. So welcome to the.
Yeah, and let's not forget the consumer. The consumer absolutely loves it. So I mean, we've done this for them, and they absolutely love it. So we're looking for great things for Bordeaux.
Brilliant. A round of applause from me. And I know everyone else, the attendees, thank you. This has been wonderful. And thanks so much. And I'll just remind everyone that you will receive the slides and the recordings and the key takeaways. I'm now going to segue us into our next session. So please, if you've answered the poll, thank you so much. Claudio, Johan, thank you. Goodbye, stay safe and stay well.
Take care, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I would now like to segue us into our next session, The Future is Reusable. And our host and moderator for this session is Jim Downen.
Alan, thanks so much. Delighted to be with everybody today. Congratulations on an outstanding session that I just watched, and congratulations to Johan and Claudio and our friends at Loblaw. That's really exciting news. So welcome to our international audience. My name is Jim Downham. I'm just absolutely delighted to be with you today, but I'm to be honest with you, I'm disappointed as well that we can't be together to share ideas, to have small talk, to have some fun, and to celebrate packaging innovation success stories that we typically would be doing in person in some kind of a convention hall. However, I assure you that our team has worked diligently over the last 6 or 7, 8 months to pull this together. And we've found the newest and brightest and best packaging disruptive innovation in the world. And that was an example of it, I think, and we just watched it. So very, very exciting. Our next session is entitled The Future Is Reusable. Loop launches in Canada with Loblaw and Nestle. And today I'm proud to introduce 3 leaders that are significant influencers in the world of packaging. Collectively, they are working diligently to solve the packaging challenges society is faced with. The value of packaging is significant, starting with product protection, ensuring food is safe and therefore consumers are safe, extending shelf life and waste reduction, and the label provides a guide for consumer decision-making. But as the expression goes, it takes a village to raise a child. These 3 leaders are working collaboratively to ensure that the child, in this case packaging, gets to live a long and extended life. In fact, at PAC, we don't call it end of life, we call it the next life. And as such, in 2011, we created PAC Next with a vision of a world without packaging waste. So let's hear from these 3 storytellers now, and I'm going to briefly introduce them before we kick it off. So delighted to welcome Tom Saki once again. Tom's been with us on several occasions over the years, and he's the founder and CEO of Terracycle, a global leader, truly a global leader in the collection and repurposing of complex waste systems. Terracycle operates in 20 countries, working with some of the world's largest brands, as you can see today, retailers and manufacturers to create national platforms to recycle products and packaging that currently go to landfill or incineration. In 2019, Terracycle launched Loop at Davos, a circular shopping platform that enables consumers to shop for household products in reusable packaging. Loop is available in France, the UK, and US, and just this year, Loop is available in Canada, Japan, and Australia. I'm going to then go on and introduce Catherine O'Brien. Delighted to have Catherine with us as well, and she is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Nutrition, Health, and Wellness for Nestle Canada. In this capacity, Catherine is responsible for corporate reputation management, including internal communications, stakeholder, media, and government relations, creating shared value programs, and community partners. In 2020, Catherine was recognized as a leader in the Canadian food industry as a Star Woman of Grocery. Congratulations on that, Catherine. I was delighted for you when I saw that announcement. And Catherine is the chair, newly appointed chair of the board of the recently launched Canada Plastic PAC. We've also got Ian Gordon with us, and congratulations, Ian, on that Bordeaux launch. That is so cool. Ian Gordon is the Senior Vice President of Loblaw Companies Limited, has led the development and innovation behind some of Canada's largest consumer brands, President's Choice, No Name, Like Brand, and others. He now leads Loblaw's plastic reduction strategy and overseeing the company's cross-divisional steering committee. Ian also sits on the board of the Canadian Plastic PAC. Without further delay, welcome to all, and welcome, Tom. Please kick it off for us. Delighted to have you with us.
Jim, thank you for the kind introduction. Thrilled to be here with my fellow co-panelists, Catherine and Ian. Thank you as well. And especially thank you all who are attending to listen to this discussion. I'm going to kick off by sharing a little bit about first, what is Loop, but especially where in the journey we are and what we are focusing on for this exciting experience together with our partners at Loblaw, Nestle, and many others in Canada. Just going to share my screen. This will take a quick moment to put up the the screen share. Hopefully that's coming through. So for anyone who's attending who may not be aware of Terracycle, as a very quick background, we are technically a waste management company with a central mission to eliminate the idea of waste. And we do that by first working with organizations on how do we collect and recycle those things that may not be practically recyclable today by citizens. We then focus on how do we integrate waste back into products, helping companies make their products from different forms of recycled content. And then most recently launched a division called Loop, which is all about how do we create a platform for reuse. Terracycle today, as Jim mentioned in the introduction, operates in 22 countries around the world, 2 countries, India and Thailand, as a nonprofit organization, and everywhere else as a mission-driven for-profit organization. In countries like Brazil and China, we operate those first 2 divisions, the collection and recycling and recycled content divisions, perhaps the most important things to do today with disposable products, and that's a key focus of what the plastic packs, including the Canadian plastic pack, are really there to usher in, which is how do we really drive major rates of actual recycling and use of PCR. In the countries in blue, like Canada, we do all that, and we also have Loop live. Now, as we thought about Loop, reuse or alternative delivery mechanisms rely, of course, on a reusable vessel, a reusable container. You can see some examples there on the left. But the key question then is, of course, how is that vessel cleaned and refilled? And there are 3 primary methods to achieve this. There are refill stations at stores, which are very important to grow and experiment on. And those are effectively where the consumer cleans at home and then refills in store. And those, I think, will be very appropriate for certain categories and perhaps more challenging for others, say like dry goods or even things like whole bean coffee, highly appropriate. Perhaps things like frozen products or everything from ice cream to insect repellent, perhaps a bit more difficult. Then you have the models where consumers buy the durable container, keep it at home, clean it at home, but then purchase, potentially online or in store, bulk or concentrate. Really, really fantastic area in reuse, especially around home care products like window cleaners that are very dilutable. And then where Loop focuses is what you would call pre-fill. We chose that because pre-fill is the largest at-scale reuse ecosystem in the world today. It's the Canadian beer system. It is the German beverage system, but it's also in a country like the United States, propane tanks and beer kegs. And the big challenge we noticed, though, is that these models stay in their lanes, if you will. You can't take your propane tank when it's empty to the beer store, and inversely, you can't take your beer keg when it's empty to the place you got your propane tank. So Loop tries to be a platform where you can effectively buy anywhere and return anywhere. Now, since we launched just 2.5 years ago at the World Economic Forum, the platform has grown all over the world. Today live in the UK, France, Canada, the US, and just this week, recently launched in Japan. And you can see here different retailers that are partners with us, and the dates represent when they'll be moving from online testing platforms to in-store deployments. Now, the part that you may be aware of on Loop is the beginning, critical to be able to create an assortment where we work with wonderful organizations like Nestle, who's also an investor in Loop, or now 125 major consumer product companies who create reusable versions of their products. You can see examples here, whether it's home care products with P&G or fabric care, dish soap, whether it's SC Johnson, Henkel, and so on. Personal care examples, whether Unilever or P&G. You're going to notice as I sort of click through, there's a lot of use of alloys and glass, of course. These are very quintessentially, package forms and material types that are great for reusable, but there are also, of course, engineered plastics as well. As long as the package can withstand 10 reasonable uses or more, it is welcome in the platform, noting many, like this container, have been designed for many more than those uses. Now, Nestle has been a key cornerstone partner of Loop. We really wouldn't be here without them, not just beginning with really high innovation design, like what they did in Häagen-Dazs, but then really thinking about the breadth of where reuse can become appropriate. Here's an example, Nestle products now live with Carrefour in France, whether in the beverage sector, all the way to even cat litter, a really wide assortment, really thinking about where is reuse appropriate. And you can see here an example of a reusable high quality plastic package example. So, reuse is of course very dominant in glass and alloy, but it's not exclusive to that. We've also had the privilege of working with the own brand team at Loblaw. And here's some examples of package forms that are now live in Loop, where the Loblaw team and Loop identified pack forms that are already conducive to reuse without having to change the way, the pack itself meaningfully or the way it is filled. And this is actually quite exciting that there's a lot of PAC forms today that are absolutely ready to go in a reuse environment. Typically in food, you would see these in high quality glass, but there are other examples as well that are out there in packs that are durable enough to be able to withstand the rigors of cleaning and refilling. Now, again, the way the platform works is there's these two key steps, right? First, working with wonderful brands like Nestle who develop reusable versions of their products. And a key insight, by the way, in the examples I showed you is now with enough consumer data, we're seeing consumers are attracted to these reusable products for three reasons. One is, of course, sustainability. And LCAs have shown that in most cases, reuse is favorable quite quickly, not in all cases, though. Second, a higher perception of premium, higher quality materials, maybe more functions, so pretty exciting outputs there. And then the third is actually, and this has to sort of play into the, anti-plastic movement. And I really use the word perception here, a higher perception of health when a product is packaged in a non-plastic package. I think that is very much perception-based, but as folks will know, people's perceptions are their reality. Now, the most important step is then working with retailers like Loblaw in Canada, who then make this available to the consumers. We've launched in Canada with Loblaw in an online learning environment, loopstore.ca, which we'd encourage anyone to try out and use, serving most of the Ontario marketplace. And what we're working with many retailers around the world now is moving to the next step, which is physically in store. Here's what it looks like, for example, with Carrefour, which is now in 20 stores across France. This is an ambient section. You can see sort of very similar to the idea of organic, co-merchandising everything in this example from shampoo to Nutella. Interesting insights here is that 60 to 80% of these sales are non-cannibalistic. In other words, expanding the total business of those products. Folks who are interested in shampoo but may not be in the Herbal Essence brand are now purchasing the brand to experience reuse. We've also recently deployed temperature control, starting with Danone, another brand soon joining like Tropicana and so on. Another really interesting insight is, of course, when these packages are done, they get returned to a bin at the front of the store. Doesn't matter if it's the store where you purchased it, could be any retailer participating in the ecosystem to establish this idea of buy anywhere, return anywhere. And we are seeing today 80% of packages come back within 60 days of purchase. That's for all PAC forms, even things that are long consumption cycle like home care and personal care. But once we sort of double click, if you will, on just the beverage category, which is very fast moving, 99% of packs are coming back within 60 days of purchase. From there, to give you a sense of what happens, again, we're a waste management company, so we develop these bins, service them, take them to a Loop facility. Here's an example of one where they are sorted. And then if the manufacturing company wishes us to clean, we clean, and a wonderful global partnership with Ecolab, so really state-of-the-art cleaning protocols. And then from there, it goes back to the manufacturer like Nestle, who refills and sells again. This is sort of the idea of pre-fill. And what you can see an example there in France. Here's a launch we just had in Japan. This is starting in 17 Aeon stores with about 20 products. And by August, will be in about 70 stores and about 80 products. And Japan's actually a really interesting case study for us because there's this huge love of packaging and a big emerging culture around sustainability. September is going to be the next major milestone where you will see launches with Kroger, Walgreens in the US, Tesco in the UK, and further expansion with Carrefour and Aeon. And we'll be exciting to share with you later this year, early next, some exciting milestones that we're developing for the Canadian market. Now, the final thing I want to leave you with is what have we found is that what consumers care about by far the most is convenience. Then they care about features and benefits, and then they care about, can they get those two things at the right price point? So, many times when we ask the question, are people willing to pay more for eco-friendly products or more for organic? It's not quite the precise question. I would reframe it to say, first, can we give the convenience that enables a consumer to even want to purchase? Then what are the features and benefits? And then can all that be priced appropriately? And here's a great case study for that. We're actually launching cloth diapers in Loop with a major diaper brand in the next month. And research has shown us that 50 to 85% of American, British, French, and German parents trial cloth diapers. It's a massive amount of trial, but only 2 to 3% stick with them, which is a very low amount of repeat. And the number one reason cited, in fact, there's no other reason, is convenience. And that's the key thing to solve. So the way Loop is at least trying to achieve that with this multi-stakeholder collaboration is not just working with brilliant general merchandise retailers and grocers like Loblaw, but also, for example, in the QSR space with companies like McDonald's, Burger King, as you can see pictured here, Tim Hortons, and a number of others to really achieve a network where you can buy anywhere and return anywhere. And so we're really privileged to be working with just wonderful leading organizations like Nestle, Loblaw, and others who've made our Canadian launch a success, and really excited to be able to share with you a little bit behind the hood of how everything is working. So with that said, I'll pause here and thank you again for inviting us.
Okay, great. I think that was a really great overview, Tom. Thank you. And it's really nice to be here with everybody this morning to talk about this exciting project for us, and to be on a panel with Ian and Tom is always a great pleasure, and we're looking forward to the conversation with Jim to come. So maybe if you don't mind to go to the next slide, I just wanted to start our short little overview with a little bit of context setting in terms of where does packaging fit, and then where does Loop fit within the broader scheme of what Nestle is working on. So obviously, we're the world's largest food and beverage company. We have a very big global footprint, and along with that comes a lot of responsibility, which we will take happily. And we have developed what we call our net zero roadmap, as well as our climate change roadmap. And as you can see, we are, like many other companies, like-minded companies, that we have made the commitment to get to net zero emissions by 2050, and working back from that, by 2030, reducing by 50%, and 2025 by 20%. And you don't have to absorb everything on this slide. I know it's a bit of a busy one, but it's really just to set the context for the work that we're doing around packaging. For us in Canada, we've really identified three main areas that we're going to focus on. One being packaging, which we'll talk more about. The second being reduction of carbon emissions, and whether that be through things like lower emission vehicles that we use in our fleet, whether that be renewable energy in our factories and so forth, or even through our brands. And I think maybe some of you have seen that some of our brands have come forward around their carbon neutrality pledge, like Perrier and Kit Kat most recently, pledging to be carbon neutral by 2025. The third area is around responsible sourcing, and we're doing a lot of work there around sustainable cocoa, palm oil, coffee, so on and so forth. So lots of effort going on there. But an important part of the pillar, of course, is the work that we're doing around packaging. If we could go to the next slide. So again, just for a little bit of context for you, we have a main commitment, which is that we will have all of our packaging be recyclable or renewable by 2025. Our overarching goal is, obviously, we do not want any of our packaging anywhere in nature. We don't want it in the waterways. We don't want it in landfills. So that is our commitment. We're working hard at that currently. We're currently at about 87% recycle or reusable, hoping to get to 90% at the end of this year, and then lots of still hard, heavy lifting to be done on the remaining 10%. And there's 5 areas. The first is around reducing the packaging, getting rid of unnecessary plastics and hard to recycle. The second piece is around looking at alternative materials, which we're certainly looking into. We have a large R&D facility in Switzerland, looking at alternate systems, which is what Loop is, and we'll talk obviously in more detail about that. And then the fourth one is really important around ensuring that we've got the right infrastructure in place for us to make sure that what we're getting to a recycled state is actually recycled. And then lastly, new behaviors. And so what we can do in terms of talking to our consumers, working with our communities and so forth to change behavior so that the materials that are recyclable get recycled by the end user. So just transitioning over to maybe the next slide, if we could, to talk more specifically about Loop and how we got there. And I think that Tom mentioned that Nestle is very supportive of Loop, and we have made an investment in the organization as well. And it's really important as we look at our packaging journey and how we get to where we need to be. We really need to try a lot of different things is basically, I think, our approach. We need to have a lot of balls in the air at one time, and we think that that will be fruitful for us to get to our commitments. So transitioning from packaging then to ice cream and getting, sorry, just back to the previous slide, if you don't mind. Thank you. Just on ice cream, I think it's just important to kind of level set as well that, I mean, ice cream is a very important category for us. We have a very large ice cream business. And it's a locally made business. So all of our ice cream is made in London, Ontario, at the factory there, using, of course, 100% Canadian dairy and Canadian eggs and so forth. So when we thought about where we would go with a pilot project on Loop, ice cream is an ultimately a good choice for us because of the nature of the product and the fact that we manufacture it here in Canada. And as well, we also know that the consumer is looking for options. We know, and Tom mentioned some of the stats on that, but we know that consumers are looking for alternatives so that they can enjoy the brands that they know and love, but they can enjoy it in a way that, that makes them feel good about it and know that we're protecting the planet. So next slide, please. Then we get from ice cream to specifically Haagen-Dazs. And how did we end up there? Well, I should say, first of all, we have had some experience with Haagen-Dazs in the US. So the US launched the reusable packaging the year before we did. So we had some learnings from there, but obviously had to tailor for the Canadian market. But Haagen-Dazs is a good brand to start with. And it's a good brand to start with because Haagen-Dazs is all about pure, simple ingredients, sustainable ingredients that then is made into extraordinary ice cream. So this was a great place to start with the Loop journey. And then just looking at the brand as a whole, there's other initiatives underway. So we're talking today really about the small tub of Haagen-Dazs, but there's other formats. So things like the individual stick products, the boxes are currently recyclable, of course, but the packaging around those is not. So we continue to work on that at the same time as we focus on Loop. Next slide, please. So this is really just kind of a recap, I think, a little bit of what Tom talked about, just in terms of how the Haagen-Dazs experience works with the online store and in partnership with Loblaw. So basically, people go online and they choose what ice cream they want to order. Currently, we have two options, vanilla and coffee, which are the most popular flavors. So people choose those, they order them online, they enjoy them, and then they're there to be picked up afterwards and reused. Next slide, please. So as we approached this initiative and this pilot in partnership with Loblaw and with Loop, we really had to have a new approach. We had to really alter our mindsets around how to think differently. This is a very different approach than what we've used in the past. We had to really uncover and peel back a path towards commercialization. How do we get from manufacturing to the sale of the product? Of course, we didn't really start with an easy product. A frozen product is complex. So there were interesting challenges along the way there. And then lastly, we needed to really leverage the learning that we had from other locations, but we also wanted to leverage the local innovation capacity, which is really fantastic at our London factory. The next slide, please. So this is really just going to give you a quick look at what it looks like. And I have one here for you to see. So you can see the original packaging, and then you can see the new package. We really had to completely reimagine the ice cream container. And work was done on this by our global design team and in conjunction with input from us as well in Canada. But it went from idea to execution in just a year. So that was pretty quick for us. You can see that it's a stainless steel package. It's double walled, so it's double insulated. So it keeps the integrity of the product. And for something like Haagen-Dazs, people have expectations of what the product is going to taste like and how it's going to perform. So this packaging really keeps it cold. It keeps it cool on the inside, but not on the outside. And it also melts in a way that the top melts faster than the bottom so that you can continue to enjoy portion after portion. And that's what that package looks like. So the next slide, please, just to talk a little bit about how's it going? How's it going with the launch? Well, I would say that when we launched the product, it got a lot of attention, let's say. And when Loop launched with Loblaw, there was a lot of media on the whole thing. I'll talk specifically about Haagen-Dazs, but lots of interest in the program. And we also, actually, as I mentioned, we launched this a year ago in the US. And as we all know, the news kind of bleeds into Canada. So there was a lot of media already about the US launch. So we were kind of worried what would happen in Canada, but in fact, we had really excellent response, and we had over 80 million impressions from the media perspective and lots of interviews and inquiries. And then most importantly, the product was very sought after by the 5,000 pilot participants in Ontario, and it sold out within 2 months. So we've been really pleased with the awareness of the program, the awareness of the product in the program, and very, very impressed with the original kind of uptake on the program. I will say that it's early days for us still. So in terms of kind of where to from here, I think that's a very good question, and one that we're grappling with and talking about. We need to get some more data and some more understanding about how the program is going, continuously having conversations with Loop as well as with Loblaw, and see where we go from here. Next slide. So basically that's what I wanted to give you, a quick snapshot of where we came from and where we are. And I really look forward to where we go next. I don't know where that is, I will be honest with you, but we're certainly giving lots of thought and consideration and looking forward to partnering with Ian and Tom more in the future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Catherine, and thanks, Tom, for the setup. First off, let me apologize for being the panelist that least resembles their pre-COVID beauty shot. I think, there is no question that before the headlines read COVID-19, consumers were really concerned about plastic waste, and not just in Canada, but as a major issue globally. There's been lots of discussions about the problem, but we've been challenged to align on a credible solution that can drive long-term change. Loblaws is the leading grocer in Canada, but we realize that while we can make a small difference, that won't be enough. We need partners like Loop, like Nestle, to achieve success in this. And we really need it at a global perspective, as Tom talked about earlier in his presentation. Loop is really starting to make inroads around the world. We need global solutions that we can affect locally and really make change happen. Next slide. So success will be achieved when we're all aligned to a common objective and an action plan to get there. From a Loblaw's perspective, we support the Ellen MacArthur Foundation vision for a circular plastic economy. To achieve this objective, we're part of the Consumer Goods Forum, a global CEO-led organization of 450 retailers and manufacturers from 70 countries who, through the Plastic Waste Coalition of Action, which is co-led by Galen Weston, the CEO of Loblaw, and Alan Jope, the CEO of Unilever, they have established golden design rules for plastic packaging. These rules have been agreed to globally and are now being rolled out locally through the Canada Plastic PAC, which Jim talked to at the start of the presentation. This, with the objective overall of making all of our packaging recyclable or reusable by 2025. Next slide. This is part of our Loblaw strategy focused on 4 pillars. They won't be unknown to you. Reduce. That means things like eliminating excess packaging on products like, you may have heard in the media, the famous double wrapped cucumber 3-pack. We want to look at reuse by changing consumer habits through initiatives like Loop. Recycle. This is where we're following the golden design rules and eliminating challenging plastics like black plastic and expanded polystyrene. And finally, reframing. I think we often forget as plastic gets vilified that plastic plays a major role in shelf life, transportation protection, and eliminating food waste. We just need to use it more effectively. Next slide. Loop, which is the major initiative in our reuse pillar, was launched during the pandemic on February 1st. And to Catherine's point, judging by the media reaction, was incredibly well received. Support and awareness was mainly via launch PR, and inclusion in our Loblaw's digital assets like PC Express and PC Optimum. From our landing pages, consumers were redirected to loopstore.ca, where Ontario consumers can buy their favorite products in reusable packaging. This, in theory, sounds relatively simple. Next slide. Loblaws, in partnership with Loop, have really created an alternative shopping channel and a reverse supply chain to support this initiative. Starting with the consumer at the red arrow. Consumer orders online, the product's delivered to their home in a loop tote. The consumer enjoys the same great experience, but instead of putting the empty container in the trash bin, they put it back into the loop tote, which is then picked up and returned to a facility where the package is cleaned and sanitized. And Tom showed you an example of that in France. It is then returned to the manufacturer where it's refilled and sent to the loop distribution center to complete the reuse model and achieve true packaging circularity. Next slide. Initial results have been encouraging with penetration and repeat well ahead of benchmarks we established based on similar launches in the UK. Where we have not seen as much success is in average basket size and value. This is not a flaw in the system, but rather a function of the number of products that we launched with, which was significantly fewer than comparative markets. Next slide. Early adopters are extremely positive and optimistic that this initiative will expand in both scale, availability, and scope. And what is interesting is that of the 3 best-selling products on the left, one, as Catherine has just talked about, has been developed specifically for this program. The other 2 are not designed specifically for the program, but have the ability to loop through the system multiple times at a minimum of 10 as per Tom. So this clearly has demonstrated that we can engage the consumer and they want more. They're willing to make the extra effort and support the theory of reuse. Now the question really becomes, how do we scale the idea? Next slide. Our next step is planning and implementing an integrated store model. This will require a special section dedicated to ambient, refrigerated, and frozen loop products, an area for the return bin and totes, and an internal deposit and return system. We will also need more brand owners to step up and participate in the program to build basket size and participation. Consumers have told us that if they participate in the program, they want to be all in. In other words, they would like the ability to complete all or the majority of their shop in reusable packaging. To ensure that we can successfully deliver this customer experience on a consistent basis, we also need to ensure that we have the mechanics in place to support this proposed new section in our stores. Next slide. We have spent years perfecting and driving costs out of our one-way supply chain, where after the customer has a great product experience, they either send the packaging to landfill or, if we are lucky, divert it to the recycling stream. Next slide. Now we're introducing a brand new circular supply chain with all the steps in red outside of our traditional supply chain. The only commonality is the customer product experience. Again, we need to optimize this new supply chain, and the more partners that we have, the more efficient we can make it. From the special loop section in store, the consumer buys the product, pays a deposit, enjoys the product, returns the packaging to any return bin, either at a Loblaw store or even at their local Tim Hortons when picking up their morning coffee in a loop coffee cup. The bins are emptied, taken to the cleaning facility, sorted, returned to the manufacturer, refilled, and sent to the Loblaw's DC, where they, along with all the other loop-specific SKUs, will be ordered to refill our dedicated loop section in stores. Next slide. So how really do we make this initiative a success? The most important thing in my mind is we need to change consumer behavior. We need to make loop a destination. As Tom's point was clearly made, it needs to be convenient. We need to find the right pricing model, and we need to expand the breadth of the loop shop at a minimum to cover all of household basics. And most importantly, we need to optimize our new circular supply chain. To be successful, we will need to partner with brands that the consumer demands, and we need to invest in this learning journey together. Tom and the Loop team, Nestle with their commitment to new packaging, have demonstrated that Canadians are interested in making Loop work The question now is, can we scale this initiative? Jim?
Thank you, Ian. Let's get everybody up on the screen now and we can have a conversation. So, outstanding, everybody. Thank you. And hopefully, starting my video. Sorry about that, folks. Tom, like as you were presenting today, I was thinking back to pictures of you in Davos in 2019 in January. And in February, you were in New York on stage at our PAC Global Leadership Awards, talking about 1 of 100, right? At our 1 of 100 event, talking about it. And here we are, like just over 2 years later, and it's amazing how far it's gone. Just talk about that just for a moment, in terms of, like, you've been on a whirlwind tour, and for the bigger part of it, the majority of it, you've been doing it behind a Zoom screen.
Yeah, absolutely. It is phenomenal when we sort of lift our heads above the water and take into account what has been achieved. I mean, Loop has fundamentally become a multi-stakeholder collaboration. I mean, it only exists because you have leading retailers like Loblaw who are really helping, or leading consumer product good companies like Nestle, because it sends the message to the ecosystem. And that is why now we're boasting, I mean, literally in this 2.5 short years plus pandemic, 15 of the world's most important retailers, 125 major CPG conglomerates. It is incredible to see during this as well how fast the product development cycles have gone. I mean, usually product development is 3 years, right? If you think about all the way through, and everything you've seen is less than 2.5 years. And we're talking, major brands going through all these processes. I think what's also been interesting, you mentioned the pandemic, is what has been the pandemic's effect on reuse, right? So Ian mentioned in his remarks that, people measurably pre-pandemic were very, very concerned about waste and the environment. And what's exciting is that while a lot of our attention has gone towards, the pandemic itself and so on, the level of concern for consumers has not dissipated. Some would even argue it's strengthened. We're consuming during the pandemic 30 to 50% more disposable goods, from PPE to takeaway food packaging and so on. And we're also, because recycling has been disrupted during the pandemic, recycling less. And so this, I think, is while it has created challenges on resources, challenges on supply chains, the energy and momentum has not let down, and that's really mostly thanks to the partners you have on stage together. We are more the glue that holds folks together, but it's the continuous commitment from manufacturers like Nestle and retailers like Loblaw who make this all happen. The other interesting thing on reuse is that pre-fill models have not been measurably been affected by concerns around the pandemic, while in some cases consumer-driven reuse, like store refill models, or even as simple as taking your cup back to a coffee shop to be refilled, have been temporarily suspended due to related concerns. So I'm really hopeful that those alternative reuse models will come back. And I think we got very lucky that pre-fill, you wouldn't even notice the effects of COVID on sales data or repurchase data. And I think consumers are very comfortable with a professional apparatus that is cleaning and resetting packaging.
It's really exciting watching this journey, and I've been watching you for a long time, as you know, and Catherine, I've also been watching Nestle for a long time, as the largest food processor, consumer packaged goods food processor in the world. Your journey towards recyclability, reuse, what is your program, Net Zero Roadmap? I mean, has been extraordinary. Now you had Haagen-Dazs there from the get-go with Tom. And impressive journey for sure. Love the package. And but it sounded like at the end of your presentation, you weren't quite sure where you're going to go next with this. What do you share a little bit more about that for us?
Yeah, sure, happy to. I think the way we approached the Haagen-Dazs initiative here in Canada was definitely as a test. We got to test a lot of things to see what's going to stick. and certainly believe in Loop. And so for us, it's about figuring out what are the right products, what's the right approach that we can take on that, and really learning from it. So I think that's where we are at the beginning of that journey. So I think we're just digesting kind of how it's going. At the same time, we're looking at, our other categories. Obviously, we're a company that makes, everything from pet food to baby food to bottled water and chocolate ice cream, pizza, and so forth. So there's lots of options to choose from. And I think we're having really good conversations within the company and within the business leads of those businesses in terms of where we go from here and how does this fit within each brand. I mean, we have, and I think some of my colleagues today might be on the line from our technical packaging team here at Nestle. And each and every single brand has a packaging roadmap for them, very detailed. And so it's about figuring out where does this fit within the initiatives there. The other thing, I guess, is we are hoping to get more learning from our global colleagues as well. We know that, as Tom mentioned, I think the US has launched in a few brands. They've done something with a Tidy Cat and also with Haagen-Dazs there. I know the US is looking at launching with Gerber Baby Foods as well as with some of our imported water brands as well. And then of course, Europe is a bit ahead of us with some of the work that they've done that I think Tom showed. So for us, it's been a great start. We just want to absorb the learning and we want to have really good, thorough discussions in terms of where does this fit going forward and how can we scale it, as Ian said. I mean, I think that's the big challenge, and having somebody like Loblaw looking at the same thing is really great and will help us kind of uncover and peel back where the opportunity lies.
Thanks, Catherine. I've really enjoyed working with you, especially on the Canada Plastic Bag, and great leadership there. So Ian, great pitch, my friend. And you get to bragging rights for the first two presentations today with your coffee launch with Bordeaux as well. So that's exciting. Congratulations on that one. I'm sure that Claudio will be knocking on Catherine's doors next, or Tom's doors next, to talk about reusing that package more than 10 times. So Claudio will be working the phones, I'm sure.
Well, I think actually, Jim, if I can jump in there, I would say, when you raise that point of the Bordeaux, I think it's a really great example that, the solution needs to be a multi-pronged approach, right? And you have to attack this from different angles, and you have to pick those projects to scale that you think are going to have the most immediate and the biggest impact overall. And I think, you did talk earlier about the compostable coffee pod launch, which was focusing on a significant plastic waste challenge that we had, and then Bordeaux moving forward, bringing innovation into the system and trying to drive that, which I think, today's panel really talks to. Loblaws can try to do it on their own, Nestle can try to do it on their own, and Loop can try and do it on their own. But what we really need is convergence of ambition and working together and getting enough people on board to really make a difference in the challenges we face from a excess packaging perspective.
I have to write that down, convergence of ambition. Love that line, thank you. I hope you don't mind if I use it.
Feel free.
But when we talk about Loop and talk about the last 2 years, Tom, I mean, this is an incredibly complex issue, from dream day, ideation day, to consumers picking up or ordering online. And what's been accomplished is phenomenal. I've already talked about that. But let's talk about how do we bring more people into this? I think that Ian called out for that today. And I really think that to really get significant traction, what else can we be doing to move the market along?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing, in this is that it has to really be for everyone, and that means consumers, brands, and retailers. And it also needs to get to scale. I think John actually, I saw in the chat window, asked, capacity to scale, and scale is critically important because that's what's going to get the product to be the most democratically priced and maintain, the business models that are needed for all the participants, especially retailers and brands. And as you can imagine, scale is key, especially when we're competing against disposable supply chains, which are like finely tuned Olympic athletes when it comes to scale, in versus new delivery methods, which are still systems, learning to walk. So this is why scale is really achieved by working with the leaders, leading retailers like Loblaw, leading manufacturers like Nestle. That is so important because that actually makes it easier for smaller producers and smaller retailers to later enter and enjoy the infrastructure that's been developed. Another key part of this is to make sure, especially as a platform like Loop, to do as little as possible, because the more we do, the more we will hinder the growth of scale. And that's again why, instead of becoming our own retailer, let's work with the leading Canadian retailer like Loblaw, who can actually then bring it to market much faster, attract consumers, handle those very important and costly exercises of consumer acquisition and retention, and also even know how to think about what is the assortment, how do we train, all these things that are the trade craft of the retailer. And the same goes for the brands. This way, we can constrict as much as possible the operational needs, which then allow, especially for scale, to be achieved. I think the exciting part in all of this is reuse does already work at scale. It is the Canadian beer system, and it's even in systems where you don't even see the word sustainability come up, like propane tanks or beer kegs. How often is someone who's throwing a barbecue with a beer keg even thinking about sustainability? Yet that is a pre-fill model, and those packages will go around over and over. So it does work there. The consumer demand is there. I think what's important is how do we ensure we get as many brands and then the retail landscape together so that the scale can be achieved quickly, and really bring not just the the business model, but the environmental impact, so that it moves out of pilot into something that's really achieving everything that we hope it will.
So Ian, let's go back to you. You're in the early days of adoption of this product, and I like the honesty where on one side of it you saw success, on the other side basket of products not quite there yet, and we appreciate that transparency. So what are the biggest challenges for mass adoption for any reuse system? I know Tom's talked a little bit about that, but what is it from your perspective?
I think we're trying to promote change, and changing consumer habits and behavior is really challenging. And I think you need to have courage as a brand owner to lead that change. And the more people that can lead the change and have the courage to try and do that, and change takes investment. Now, there's generally a reward for that investment over time, but we need to see people lining up, willing to make the investment, having the courage to lead the change in the marketplace. And I think we have brands that the consumer will follow. And we need to make it, to Tom's point, having been one of those people that tried cloth diapers for about one trial, it needs to be convenient for the consumer. So we can change consumer behavior. We can't change it that much. We have to move them along the continuum slowly. So I think really it's about, I do think it is about making a conscious effort and investing in that change, because like our supply chain, over time through scale, we will optimize it. We will make it different. I work for Loblaws, so I'll go back to another Loblaws example. When we introduced free from animal proteins, it was a major investment. It was a change in the way the supply chain worked, the feed protocol for the animals, the harvesting of the animals. All of that was a change, and it was an investment. And the cost was quite high from a consumer perspective. But today we have scale. The market has moved. We've been able to move the market. We've changed the consumer dynamic, and it now is much more economical than it was 10 years ago when we introduced it. And I think this is a perfect example where up front, when you have people with the courage to make the change, you will see over time, it becomes an accepted norm.
I think it's an example of brilliant leadership all the way up to your CEO. So congratulations on that. Let's just talk a little bit for a second. I'm going to ask Catherine one question. Alan, I'm going to ask you, who's working the phones for us in the Q&A section, to get prepped up for a question, but I just want to close the loop with Catherine before we do. Excuse the pun, Tom. So why did Nestle invest in Loop? I mean, this is really thinking outside of the box. This is what Ian talked about, courageous investment. right from the get-go. So tell us a little bit about that if you can.
Yeah, sure, happy to. And I wasn't part of any of those discussions, but I'm sure anyone who's met Tom knows he's a very good salesman, first of all. So I'm sure he painted a very compelling picture of why to invest. But I mean, I would go back a little bit to some things that have already been said, but we have some big challenges in some of our packaging. Like there's no way around it in terms of making those multi-layer laminates, some of those packages that are just really tough for us. And the only way we're going to solve those things is by working together, you know, with others, which is one of the reasons why we joined the Canada Plastics Pact and feel so strongly about that, because we all have the same problems, right? There's different types and sizes and shapes and colors of packages, but at the end of the day, there's only so many, and then we all face the same problems. So when it related to Loop, I think our notion was this is a really interesting format. There is a lot of opportunity here, and it makes total sense. And as Tom said, it's already being used in many different industries already. So what can we do? How can we leverage it? So I think that was the reason to join Loop, was it is one of a few things that we're pursuing to see what sticks and what sticks where. I think Loop is going to have a very important role. I think we see that. We think there's a future for that, and we want to be a part of it. So that's definitely why we joined Loop, wanting to be part of the solution and wanting to be, as you said, a bit out of the box. I mean, the same old same is not working anymore. So I think there's lots of opportunity and lots of passion within Tom and the Loop organization, and lots of applicability to so many of the categories that we operate in. One of the things, if you don't mind, I was just going to tag on to what Ian was saying earlier around getting to scale. And I do think something that's really important is this notion around consumer behavior. And because I think sometimes, I mean, we can have all the commitment at the top from our companies that we want, and we can create this amazing system, but if the consumer isn't going to change, we're not going to be anywhere. And I mean, as much as communicating to consumers is really what we do as a sales and marketing type company, sometimes I think we don't take enough time to bring the consumer along with us on the journey and explain why things are the way they are and so forth. So I do feel like there's lots of good work to be done around consumer behavior and communication and engagement that we can't kind of have at the end of the process, but have integrated throughout the process.
Yeah, I think you're bang on with that. I've been talking about that for years, as I call the consumer the forgotten stakeholder. And the other thing I'd like to remind everybody of is that even though you're sitting there today representing Nestle and Ian's representing Loblaw and Tom's representing Loop, at the end of the day, we're all consumers. So we're really talking to each other. And we just need to make sure that we figure out a way, and it's going to be a huge challenge for us. And it's something that we've already touched on at the CPP, right? As a way that we figure out how to get them more involved. So I'm going to ask my esteemed colleague, Mr. Blake, who's been monitoring the chat box there and question box. Alan, would you please jump in and ask some questions?
Absolutely. And thank you, Tom and Catherine and Ian. This has been fantastic so far. And as you can imagine, lots of questions coming through. And one area that's of particular interest is this whole question about standard versus bespoke reusable packaging. And is there sense in that? Should we be moving to a standard package? We talk about the beer store. So where does bespoke fit in? And then there's some follow-up questions. But so let's just leave it at that first and maybe direct that at you, Tom.
Absolutely, Alan, thank you. And thank you for the question. It's a very important one. And there's a natural tension, right? The obvious tension is the more bespoke, the more cost, and the less bespoke, the more standard, the less cost. That's the objective tension. Now, Loop's point of view is we have no point of view. We let the free market decide. You know, retailers are the ones who actually choose the assortment, and brands choose what assortment they would like to make. We, on our end, are a platform. And what we're seeing is actually an emergence of both. So for example, and this is actually echoing the way traditional packaging is. So, you know, for example, our partners in, prestige cosmetics or perfume, brands like Coty or, Unilever Prestige and L'Oreal and others, they're much more focused, as they are today in disposable packaging, on highly bespoke packaging. They do that because, the margin profiles can do that, can absorb it, those higher costs. And because consumers really are delighted by that. I mean, think about the perfume aisle. Every package is fundamentally different, and you're going to see the same in reuse. Now, on the other side, with brands that are really looking to shave every penny off the cost and thinking about how do we make it the most affordable product experience for a consumer, which are, in other sectors like beverage, for example, in some cases, there the goal is to move more towards standard packaging. So we're seeing both emerge simultaneously, and it's really, dependent on the category and also the price point of that is trying to be achieved. Just to give you a sense on the business model, if it's bespoke packaging, when the packaging comes back, like the Haagen-Dazs container in Catherine's organization, we then sort it by SKU and then effectively deliver it back to, in that example, Nestle, who then refills. If it's standard packaging, we're working with packaging companies. This will first start out in Europe and then go elsewhere, where they become effectively the clearinghouse. So we could be collecting back a standard pack from 20 different brands. And then that all is then sent back not to those individual brands, but the packaging company, who then makes it available to whatever company wishes to participate. And both, I think, will exist in parallel. I think the conclusion point here is we don't want to be in a position where we're saying no to, to a brand. Instead, how do we make whatever choice a brand wants to make and a retailer wants to make possible through a shared reuse apparatus?
Thank you, Tom. That's a great answer. And maybe we should extend this question to Catherine and Ian as well. As this is early days, and you're looking at what are the right applications and what makes sense. But within this, also brand perception and brand appearance is very important. And Catherine, you mentioned that you're moving from 1 use to 100 uses. So I believe that you're probably looking at a learning curve here as you think about wear and tear and the overall brand perception of Haagen-Dazs throughout this extensive reuse life cycle.
Yeah, I know you're right. And I think we're not at the stage where we've got, kind of full transparency from that. I think we're going to rely on our US counterparts as well, who are a year ahead of the game. But certainly, from a brand perspective, and the integrity of the brand is very, very important. And so we want to ensure that the packaging is, has a long life and is not compromised in any way, for sure. So that's definitely a consideration, and certainly one that we're studying. I mean, I think for us as well, we're dabbling in both, customized packaging as well as, existing, where we are using in Europe, existing packaging, for example, from San Pellegrino Perrier water, and right through to the Haagen-Dazs completely new and innovative packaging. So again, it's all part of the assessment and learning. And I think certainly the role of the brand and first of all, the safety of the product is the first concern. And then the integrity of the product, how it's delivered to people, which was one of the reasons why it was actually really good to start with ice cream, because there's no more sort of complex product in terms of delivering the exact same experience, excuse me, as with the previous packaging. So I think that's certainly front and foremost, I can tell you, in all the marketers' minds, and will be definitely part of the assessment as we go forward in terms of which route we go. But it is complex. I mean, it's complex to have a brand new package that your lines are maybe not configured for and so forth. And as Tom said, most expensive is the new package, least expensive existing, but it has to fit for the brand and for the category.
Thank you, Catherine.
I think Alan, I would just
Yes,
like to add to Catherine's point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to add to Catherine's point, we're in a learning curve. And, as I talked a bit about, we're creating new supply chains that we've never actually executed before. And we need to get these products, you look at average purchase frequency of sort of 6 to 8 weeks for most consumer goods items. We're going to be putting these through 6, 7, 8 times a year. So in a year, we might see the impact of what is the new supply chain impact on those products. It may be that using current packaging is not the most efficient or cost-effective way, and potentially bespoke packaging may actually work better in the new supply chain. So I think it's, to Tom's point, it's a little bit early to tell, and that's why we move through these testing and pilot programs to really learn and understand. If you do, we keep talking about the beer store. The beer store actually started with the reusable model in the industry standard bottle agreement. And if you look at those people who actually use bespoke packaging, that was outside of the reusable system. So that became a more expensive, less profitable methodology of delivering your brand to the consumer, which is the exact opposite of what we're talking today. So I think it comes back to test, experiment, and how do you drive as much scale as possible into this system for efficiency.
So Ian, let me just follow up on that in terms of cost and scale. Now that you're looking at this, and of course in the world of EPR, what's your understanding of what Loop will do in terms of the sort of fees that you expect to pay within this system? Haha, I know, tough one. And oh, by the way, are you asking consumers to pay any sort of fee up front in terms of funding the return system?
I think I just froze. Did I just froze? I just froze.
No, you're good.
There.
No, you're good.
Okay. It is a deposit return system. Again, just like modeled after any other reusable system, propane, beer, anything else. So the consumer, and that's what I was trying to say, that's part of the supply chain we need to set up, because internally we need to have the capability when the consumer purchases the Haagen-Dazs ice cream that we ask for a deposit on that container, which is an incentive to return the container and keep it within the system. So in terms of the EPR question is almost bigger than outdoors for me. I'm not really sure reuse in the next 2 to 3 years is going to have a significant impact on our EPR fees, and certainly not why we're trying to get there. It is Loop is yet another prong on a multi-pronged approach that we have to solve packaging waste issues, both locally, domestically, and globally.
Thank you. Back to you, Tom. Do you see any limit in terms of the types of materials that can be used, and any impact that material choices might have in terms of robustness through the system and losses in the system?
Yes. I mean, this is one of the exciting parts of what we're learning. So first and foremost, before sort of being specific, I would say the more important factor economically and environmentally in reuse models is the total number of times the package will go around, not just can, but will go around. Because if you take a big number of impact or cost, once you start dividing that with a meaningful number, it dilutes down to very, very little. So the biggest factor to think about is the denominator in the equation, which is how many uses that package will get. And that's the same on economics and environment. Those usually tend to almost always go hand in hand. More economic costs, more environmental costs, not always, but generally speaking. So now as we think about, where is reuse relevant? We've found, because it's not just, FMCG, fast moving consumer goods, or QSR, like quick serve restaurants, with a retail in the UK, we're now starting with infant clothing. With a brand in the US, we're now starting with those actual cloth diapers, and so on. And so what we found is there's 3 factors to think about where relevance of reuse gets higher. One is, how quickly will the item become waste from the moment of purchase? A coffee cup, highly relevant. A Swiss watch, very low relevance. Doesn't matter how often it's purchased, mind you. It's how quickly does it become waste from the moment of purchase, even if it's an item that you purchase very infrequently. Then the second is, how much of a design improvement is there? What opportunity for improvement of design? Could be material improvement, could be functional, and so on. You could see, for example, in the Haagen-Dazs container, phenomenal breakthrough design improvement. While again, a Swiss watch, probably low, improvement opportunity, if any. And then the third is there a concern around that object as a waste stream? Could be the concern, from a consumer concern, legislative concern, like the straw has high legislative concern. Could be emotional concern, and so on. It doesn't necessarily have to follow logic, but is there a concern? And coffee cups, for example, high concern. Something like Swiss watches, I've never heard anyone concerned about Swiss watch litter or waste or anything of the sort. So that's on one aspect. And then the final is on material selection. I think the important aspect to think about here is what is right for the product, and does that create an equal or ideally better experience for the consumer, and things like freshness, how does the content interact with the material type, and I think there's a lot of opportunity here because the package is moving from a cost of goods sold to an asset.
Thank you. There's another question here, and this I think is going to go to Catherine and Ian. It's about consumer response. And obviously you've been looking very carefully at consumer response. And there's this question around opaque packaging that doesn't allow the consumer to see the product versus what this might mean in terms of perception, especially around food products. And would this learning inform future use of opaque versus transparent packaging in this format? So it's kind of an interesting question. You know, we want robust packaging, and we're talking about aluminum, steel, and glass. And obviously we saw with the ketchup and the pasta sauce, you can see the product. Obviously with Haagen-Dazs, it's opaque, and we're going to learn here. But what are your early insights in terms of this launch with Haagen-Dazs, and you're thinking about other food products that are going to be ambient, frozen, and refrigerated? Maybe we'll start with Catherine, and then Ian, you can add on to that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think on the ice cream example on Haagen-Dazs, it was all, you could never see the product. It was always, you know, the current packaging or the traditional packaging is not something that you can see through anyway. And I think what we really tried to do, and I think again, this is where, you know, we get into a lot of
All right. I think Catherine
I think it might be
frozen.
Catherine, Alan.
I thought that was me, but why don't I jump in while Catherine's
Ian, yes, please
unfreezing?
jump in. Yeah.
I'll jump in while Catherine unfreezes herself. I think that's a tough question, and certainly not in isolation of the loop discussion and what type of packaging to use. I mean, if you look at it from a president's choice perspective and example, the rule of thumb we've always used is, if you're trying to sell President's Choice Black Label Fiorelli pasta in a box where the consumer can't see the product and they don't know what it is, you're going to be challenged to get trial. If you're trying to sell a PC frozen lasagna, which if you've ever bought one, is not a particularly visually attractive product when it's frozen, you don't want to see that product. And I think a lot of it has to do with the brand and awareness of the product. So it's not a function of, is it a reusable package or not? It's more a function of what type of product is it. And I think, to Catherine's point, you know, you've never visually been able to see the ice cream to begin with. And to move from a cardboard or a plastic tub to an aluminum container is not a significant issue. I do think a lot of it has to do with brand trust, which is why I think as we move forward, we need big brands with trusted brand equities that will encourage the consumer who, when you talk about the experience we have, and Tom may be able to touch on this, the consumers who are using Loop right now, I can pretty much guarantee are classic early adopters. Mm-hmm. They will always try something new. They will always see what's happening. As we get scale, then you're going to get more into typical consumer behavior, which is convenience is number one. I want to make sure I'm getting a good economic value, and I trust the brands I'm buying to deliver a great consumer experience.
Thanks, Ian. Jim, how are we doing? I've got a few more questions. So do we have time?
We're doing really well. 12:08, Alan. We've got 7 more minutes. So
here's a
back.
Catherine, Catherine's back. Are you unstuck?
Welcome back.
Are you? So Ian tag teamed and jumped into the ring and rescued you. I think he did fine. So it's the nature of what we're dealing with. So yeah, that's okay. Alan, yeah, go ahead. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I've got some closing comments, but we've got a few minutes.
Okay. Well, Tom, this is for you. There's all of these early applications that we've heard about today are around food contact. So the folks wanted reassurance that the sanitization process is all above board, regulated, and third-party approved, especially during COVID. Any comments on that and the work you do with Ecolab?
Yeah, it's an excellent and critically important question. So first and foremost, the direct answer is yes. You know, with the capital Y. We have this wonderful partnership with Ecolab, who is our cleaning backbone in both the European and North American marketplaces. We use different wonderful partners in our Asian and Oceania deployments. But Ecolab is the world's largest industrial cleaning operator, and so they are actually the ones who do the cleaning. Right. So this is very important, is that what Loop is trying to string together wonderful stakeholders, you know, examples like Nestle on the production side or Loblaw on the retail side, but also on the infrastructure side, because the less we have to create, you know, capability from scratch on, the faster we can scale. So when the packaging comes back to a Loop distribution center where it's sorted, there's an Ecolab clean room module inside that building that does the cleaning. And it's also different depending on the product that is being cleaned. What is interesting, though, I just want to sort of point out something interesting, Alan, that you mentioned, that you said in the question, is the word regulation. So I have the privilege of co-chairing at the World Economic Forum the Consumers Beyond Disposability workstream, which is a fancy sort of term for their reuse, global reuse workstream, with a number of stakeholders, including representatives from Nestle and other great organizations. And we are at Davos coming up this January, publishing it'll be publicly available white paper on cleaning standards, design standards, and also how can cities encourage reuse frameworks through grants and legislation and so on. And the punchline is that cleaning is very unregulated globally. So there's actually not a lot of pre-existing regulations that govern this, because in many cases it has not existed before, and it's typically left up to self-governance. Now, so for us, you know, we're excited because we're able to create whole new standards on like how do you deal with allergens and so on. And if you walked into one of our systems, it literally is a clean room environment. And this is interesting because we do, you know, as consumers interact with very low level sophistication of cleaning. Like, for example, when we just eat at a restaurant, you know, that's, you know, just washed on a dishwasher in the back. And so hopefully the work we're doing, you know, with not just what we're doing, but being audited by our partners consistently, is going to create all new standards of how do you clean everything from a laundry detergent bottle to an ice cream container, and do that in not just accepted levels of safety, but new levels of safety.
Thanks, Tom. One very quick final question, Jim, then I hand it back to you.
Yeah, very quick.
Just for Ian and Catherine, how does this fit into the e-commerce world, and are you working within that world or not?
Well, currently it's being executed through the e-commerce world. So that is our main channel of distribution. And in future, as we move to an integrated store model, we will have the capacity and capability within those stores to be part of our e-commerce model, which in our case is PC Express, which is picked at store level. But because we will have separate slots in the distribution centers for Loop specific products, it will absolutely be integrated into the e-commerce model, because again, that's what the consumer or some of the consumers in the marketplace are looking for. And at the end of the day, we're in business to address consumers' needs.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we've seen a big change in behavior with COVID, and how much of that sticks is also something everyone's watching for. But regardless of that, certainly e-commerce plays a big role and will definitely be part of the plan going forward.
Thank you. Jim, back to you.
Thank you, Alan. We're going to give you 45 to 60 seconds each to leave behind with the audience. What's the most important message that you would like to deliver today to our packaging community? Tom, do you want to kick it off?
Absolutely. I think I want to actually echo what Ian has said earlier, is that there is no silver bullet in sustainability. You know, we have to look at all things simultaneously and with urgency. Where can we eliminate packaging altogether? Probably the highest level of package design is to eliminate it. Then the major focus, of course, has to be how do we do recycling at scale and use PCR at scale. And then tertiary examples are how do we then reimagine how we deliver products, Loop being just one of many examples. And I think I'd really encourage no practitioner to assume that there's one answer, and to think about what are the different ways to create a much more circular ecosystem and meet consumers where they are, so that we can urgently move into a less wasteful approach to consumer goods.
Tom, thank you. Catherine? 45 seconds, please.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the biggest thing for us is, that you have to have leadership. We've got to take some bold moves to solve these big problems. We need to have collaboration, which I think is what this is all about. And then not forget the consumer along the way. So those are the main things that I have. And I think I broke the record for under 45 seconds.
Thank you, Catherine. Ian, go for it, man.
Yeah, you know what, I think all of us can find a way and a reason why things can't work. And I think what we need to do collectively is work together, invest, and lead with courage to find a way to make things work as we move forward. And absolutely, it's a massive problem, but we have the capability to solve. As Galen has said many times, we are part of the issue. Therefore, we need to be part of the solution.
Well, I'm incredibly proud of having you here on the PAC stage today. Thank you so much. This was a highlight of the two-day event for me, and I'm honored to be moderating this panel. You know, we've got the, unquestionably in my mind, one of the world leaders in terms of trying to solve this waste problem. And congratulations, Tom, brilliant. Talk about courageous leadership. You've been showing it for a long, long time. Catherine, thank you so much. Again, I've been watching Nestle, and the work that you're doing is amazing. And Ian, we've got to learn more about the golden rules, get them implemented, get them published out there. And we need a lot more brand owners to step up and be a part of this. So thanks to the three of you. Thank you, my colleague Alan, for jumping in and with the good questions. And thank you to everybody for being a part of it. We've got Canada Plastic Pack coming up at 2:00. So please come back and join us. We've got a brilliant session lined up. Keep an eye out for our PAC Connect publication that is featuring articles from all of these folks. And that'll be coming out by the middle of June. So catalyzing innovative cross-value chain collaborations with George Roeder and his team at 2:00. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good lunch.